Well, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. This is Leslie Spees. I am here this morning to present an overview of the 7 Habits of High Retention Managers and to have a virtual book launch. Thank you so much for being here this morning. To start with a quote by Simon Sinek, "Let us all be the leaders that we wish we had." I always like to start presentations with talking about what the problem is, because usually there's a reason why people attend and want to get more information. So I think the problem that we're trying to solve today is that it is hard to be a manager, busy, it's difficult to know what to focus on to be most effective and to get the most from your team. However, ineffective leadership results in turnover, disengagement, quiet quitting. Gallup says that about 50% of the workplace consists of quiet quitters, which means that they're not engaged in their work and really just kind of doing the bare minimum to get by. And managers have a big impact on that. And loss of productivity. The solution is to discover and practice 7 habits to elevate retention and engagement on your team and in your organization. Here's what we're going to cover. First, we're going to talk about bad bosses and the damage that they can do. We'll talk about 7 habits to simplify and elevate your leadership and how you can learn more. In the process, we're going to have some games, prizes, and bonuses. So let me admit a couple people. Okay. Y'all ready for a quiz? Just what you wanted on a Friday morning, right? So you will see a poll pop up, and I'd like for you to answer the questions. We'll come back together and debrief, and then we'll see who gets the most and you win a prize. Everybody see the quiz?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Okay, it looks like most have weighed in. So let's go ahead and talk through the results. All right. What percent of an employee's motivation is impacted by their manager according to Gallup? The correct answer is 70%. How much does turnover cost employers? The correct answer is 1/2 to 3 times an employee's annual salary. So the majority got that. How many employees can one disengaged employee infect? The correct answer to that is 7. What does Gallup say is the #1 strategy that senior leaders should implement to improve employee engagement? The correct answer is transition their bosses to coaches. And according to Harvard Business Review, what percent of managers were rated poorly on holds others accountable for results? And the correct answer is 46%. So this is honor system, y'all. Who got all of them right? You can speak up or type in the chat. Nobody? Did anybody get
didn't.
all but one?
I think I got all but one. I think.
Okay,
That's,
that was Linda.
yeah. I'm not
Okay,
sure though. I don't remember. I think I did.
we got Heather had all but one.
I did.
Okay, Kim had all but one.
I think I did.
Okay, and that was Luba. Okay,
Correct.
anybody else? Okay, I'm going to put you guys in a drawing for an Amazon gift card, which you will use to purchase my book, correct? I'm kidding. I see Katrina also. Okay. All right, very good. Why managers are so important. So we went over some of these statistics, but managers account for 70% of an employee's motivation. And I feel like they're probably the most important element in retention. If there is a magic bullet, I think the closest thing is the manager. Also, the number one reason why employees leave organizations. Actually has been some recent research that says that 70% of people report that their manager has more impact on their mental health than their therapist or doctor, and equal to the impact of their partner or spouse. That is huge. All right, so we're going to have a little bit of discussion. And I think I will break you guys into a couple of groups. So if you need to take a picture of the slide to remember the questions, feel free to do that. What I'd like for you to do is think about the best managers you've had and the behaviors and traits that they exhibited, and then the worst managers that you've had and the behaviors and traits that they exhibited. And if you can have somebody in your group take some notes, that would be great. And we will come back and debrief. And of course, not everybody knows one another. So take a few minutes just to introduce yourself, your organization, and your role. So we'll take 4 to 5 minutes to do this. And if you guys get finished earlier, just come on back to the main room. You should see a pop-up for the breakout rooms. For those that just joined, we're in a breakout room, so should be back shortly. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys to either speak up or type in the chat traits and behaviors of the best managers that you've had.
Hi, in our group, we had we had caring, kind, provided guidance, mentored. I won't take them all, so. Any
Okay,
in the chat?
great ones. I see in the chat, great communicator.
We had compassionate and understanding, patient, realistic, inspiring, supportive, knowledgeable, transparent, and vulnerable.
Okay,
And also being an advocate for the team and the employee.
okay. You guys did a great job. See in the chat, we have communicated well, empowered employees, came in and asked questions, there to teach. All right, so let's flip gears. What about the worst managers? What were some of the behaviors and traits that you came up with?
Well, we basically said the opposite of the the list that we came up for the best.
Yeah, it's pretty much
But we
what-
pointed out that no relationship building skills
Mhm.
and really bad, brutal communications.
Okay, great. And I see some coming in the chat, micromanager, absent, bully, micromanager, controlling, absent, ignorant, that's a good one, forgetful, unrealistic goals. Okay, great. All right, well, we're going to play a little bit of bad boss bingo because really bad bosses are what motivated me to write this book because I'm on a quest to build better bosses. And I had some bad experiences myself. I had the bully boss, I had the absent boss, I had the micromanager boss, I had the talk to the hand boss. I had the boss that didn't listen, that in one-on-ones would floss her teeth and even lift little dumbbells. So in my 30 plus years in the workforce, I've had lots of experiences, a lot of them not so good with managers. So let's take a minute and you guys go through. First person to get bingo, if you will yell bingo, you will get a prize. You get a free book. I have a snoring dog in the background. I need to better manage my employees.
Leslie, somebody's asked how we're playing this.
Okay, you are just, so what you need to do is either if you get 5 across, 5 down, or 5 diagonal. And thanks for letting me know that. Oh, I see a bingo. Samantha, oh, wait a minute. See who got it first. Having trouble scrolling. All right, I see a bunch of bingos, which is kind of sad. All right, can anybody see who the first person to type bingo was? I'm having trouble with my chat.
Shirley Gillespie.
Early, okay. All right. It's like we had a lot of bingos, so that is unfortunate. So let's talk about the top 7 habits of bad managers. And trust me, I'm not going to focus on the negative for this whole session. We're just going to start out with bad bosses because that was my motivation. Top 7 habits: disrespectful, make promises, have unrealistic, unclear expectation, favorites, overly critical, micromanage, and don't listen. What you might hear them say: you need to leave early next Thursday. That sounds like a personal problem. You need to work it out without missing work. If you don't want the job, I'll find somebody who does. I don't want to hear any excuses. Just do what you're told to do. I wanted your ideas. I'd ask for them. Work isn't supposed to be fun. That's why they call it work. Could replace you in 10 minutes, so watch your step. I'm the manager and I said so, that's why. All right, so no names, but does anybody want to share a bad boss story? If you share, you get put in the drawing for an Amazon gift card.
I had a boss who actually, this really isn't his fault. He developed cancer, so he became absent. And, there was no one to talk to, you would try to give feedback to the main manager, and she wouldn't hear it because my boss was the owner, and the owner was absent. So that was very difficult.
Okay, yeah, I can imagine. Difficult to navigate.
So Leslie, my bad boss story, I use it all the time, is that the company I was with was going through a reduction in force, and because of my role, I was at the plant until about 4 o'clock in the morning, all day doing the difficult participating in all of the difficult conversations for all shifts. And at 7 o'clock that morning, after going home to basically shower and get clean clothes, I got a call from my boss and said, where are you? Why aren't you in the office yet? You need to be in my office no later than 7:15. And so I think I'm obviously impacted by this reduction. And I get to her office at that point and she says, so how are you? How's your day? And I literally, you can imagine what I wanted to do to that individual, but that's my bad boss story.
Okay, it's a good one.
And
I had a bad boss story. Oh,
Okay, let's do Carol.
okay, I'll be glad to share. This was a a young man under 40 who made so much money he didn't have to grow up. And he was one of the owners of the company and the president, and couldn't say a sentence without the F word in it. And one day I walked in to deliver some bad news, and he slammed his hand down on the desk and at full voice, so you could even hear him in the warehouse, said, "You find out who screwed up. I'm gonna fire me somebody." Morale was really good.
I bet so. How long did you stay after that?
2 or 3 years.
Okay,
Yeah. And he grew up a little bit.
all right. I would hope so. Okay, somebody else started to share.
A bad boss story. So I mentioned this in my group. I had a boss who was like the most type A person you could ever imagine. And she was very micromanaging. And if you did one thing wrong, she basically would start nitpicking every single thing that you did. And it got so bad. She did it to me for a solid month that
Mm.
other employees were coming up to me to be like, "Man, that's really rough. Hopefully she'll move on soon." That was super stressful.
Okay, I bet so.
I have an example of one, and I laugh a little bit when I'm thinking about it because part of my job, I was in charge of marketing, communications, and events at this place. And so one of my responsibilities was a newsletter. And my boss said, I need you to write a newsletter. I want you to do one every month. I want you to include X, Y, and Z. And so I had written about X, Y, and Z, and I'd actually interviewed some of the people at the organization that related to the XYZ topics and included that. And when the first edition came out, she was like, yeah, I don't know why you spent so much time on this. Nobody reads it. So then the day of the event, it was like the annual event, like for all of the employees and their families and all of that. And so when we're preparing for this, she said, okay, I want you to map out where the vendors are going to go, the food trucks, map all that out. We're going to have people on hand. We're going to hire some temps to come in and help because we're going to have people, taking care of trash and cleaning up spills or, managing the event. And so when the day came, we were, and this happened all the time, but we were in a meeting and we were going through the checklist. Okay, this is what I felt like needed to happen. And here's I had assigned who to do what. And while we're going over this, she's on her phone texting and I don't know, maybe answering emails, and she's laughing to herself. And then somebody starts walking by like outside the office and she starts having a conversation with them.
Okay.
And so it's like, I don't know why I'm sitting here. It was very inattentive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had an experience. Actually, it's really one of the main reasons why I left the position or left the job. My mom had some severe strokes, and I had worked at the company it was 17, 18 years. Always had planned vacation, didn't really miss any time or anything. And when she had those strokes, I was out a few days with her. And they kept calling me while I was there with her, asking me questions about work, which of course was very frustrating within itself. But then because, of course my heart was not there. My heart was in the hospital with my mom in ICU. And when I came back, the words were said to me, "Well, we've done a favor working with you on this time." And I had PTO time, like I said, I had been there, not had attendance issues. And I thought, I can't have my family be a favor when I'm at work. I can't work under that. I just feel like your family is always going to come first. It's just always going to come first. And if those words had not been spoken to me, I might still be there. But they just kept sitting with me, not feeling good, going, instead of asking about her or how I was doing or caring about anything about what I was doing or us, they did us a favor. And I just, I
Mhm.
didn't feel secure anymore, and I didn't like that.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. I share some in my book, some of my bad boss stories. I will share that I have the worst boss I've ever had right now, which is me. I make myself work 60 hours a week. I talk ugly to myself. I'm kind of joking, but it is part of the reason that I decided to start my own thing and become an entrepreneur, which I never thought I would do because I'm not much of a risk taker, but felt led to do that. And part of what gave me a nudge in that direction was bad bosses. All right. Does anybody else want to share before we move on? All right. One of my favorite bosses, Michael Scott, not very effective, but very funny. So why do you think there's so many bad managers out there? Anybody have a theory on that?
I think it's twofold myself, Leslie. I
Mhm.
think one, I think that sometime along somewhere around the 1980s, we stopped investing in training from a corporate level to properly train our managers and arm them to do their jobs. Many times we
Mhm.
promote individual contributors that are very good at being an individual contributor,
Yep.
but they've never been a manager, and we just expect
Mhm.
them to somehow magically be really good at leading and managing and talking, and those types of things to others. And I think that's a failure of the organization, not of the person. And then secondly, I think as a person, though, I think many of us fail by not working on our emotional IQ and
Mhm.
understanding what our team needs, what they need, not what we need from them. So I
Mhm.
think many times as leaders, we communicate in ways that are our own biases. Maybe it's how we prefer to be spoken to, not how they prefer to be spoken to.
Mhm.
And I think that oftentimes people lead and influence the way that, again, they want to be led and influenced. And we
Right.
don't necessarily understand what our team needs and meeting them where they need to be met.
Okay. All right. Very insightful, Jason. I think you hit on everything I had thought of. Anybody have other thoughts?
Leslie, I will simply add, if I may, I think there's the concept somewhere in there of self-awareness.
Mhm.
If I think about my experience, I've been managing people at different levels since I was 18 years old.
Mhm.
And I can name many of the people who have given me tremendous props for what I've done as a leader. But I can also name people who have said I am the Antichrist as a leader. And I don't think I can be both of those things. I think in the times that I was good for some people, it had to do with my self awareness to some degree and my understanding and ability, as the young man just said before, to understand that person and speak to them in a language that they understood.
Mhm.
And for the people for whom I was the Antichrist, I don't think, I mean, I look back at that and think, I don't ever want to deal with that person again.
Mhm.
But I think, what could I have done to communicate with that person? Where was my self awareness that I was failing? And so when I throw that up in the air to the people who've managed me the best, even if I think of the worst, those are easier to think of. There were people who thought that they were the greatest manager in the world.
Oh, sure.
But for me and for plenty of others, they were not so great. And I think
Mhm.
there's some kind of concept of being self aware to say, I'm failing with this person or I'm succeeding with this person. Why? What's going on?
Mhm. Thank you, Thomas. Okay. I wanted to take just a minute to differentiate between managers and leaders because I'm going to use the terms kind of interchangeably, but there is a difference. And you've probably seen the chart before that's got the manager and leader differentiation. But managers make sure that operations run smoothly and that the job is done. They're focused on task and today, whereas leaders inspire, motivate, and influence people, and they are focused on people and tomorrow. Both roles are important. You need both, but whenever you can move into the leadership role, you're going to get more engagement and ownership from employees. All right, so we talked about bad managers. So, what are some traits of good ones? We're going to do a little game. This is a word scramble, and it's got some terms that refer to traits of good managers. So I'm going to give you 3 cycles of a little Jeopardy tune to see who can get the most. Y'all ready? See if I can get the Jeopardy tune on. There we go.
Do we holler them out?
No, write it down. You guys hear the music?
No,
Okay, I was afraid I forgot to hit that button, but well, I can hear it. I'll just kind of, you want me to hum it for you? All right, just another minute and I'm going to call time. It's hard, right?
That middle one is.
You got all the others?
Yeah.
Anybody got them all?
I think so.
Okay. All right. So we got Linda and Jason. Okay. What do you think the first one is?
Empathy.
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 Good. What about the second one?
Integrity.
Good. Third one?
Communicative.
Nope, but close.
Oh.
Anybody else got it?
Communication. No.
Over communicate.
Over communicate.
So do the letters match up to communicative, Jason? I can't say that word.
That's what I was checking. I thought it did, but I could have an extra letter. No, it does not. I've got an extra, or I have one less O than it needs, so it does not.
All right. What about the next one?
Accountability.
Yep.
Accountability. Good. What about the
Appreciation.
last one?
Appreciation.
Okay. So Linda and Jason got 4. Anybody else get 4?
Yes.
I did.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I only got
I got
4.
4.
Linda. Okay. All right. Good job, you guys. All right, so let's talk about the 7 habits of high retention managers. I'll be going through each of these at a high level. Ignite purpose. Everybody wants purpose and meaning in their work. I don't think there's really anybody that enjoys putting together widgets without knowing what greater purpose they are achieving. Clear purpose is going to unite team members around a shared cause and help foster a larger emotional investment in the work. Some statistics around why purpose matters.
Yeah.
Purpose-driven organizations, employees are more productive, 15% more engaged, have 5 times higher levels of well-being, 3 times more likely to stay. Compelling statistics, right? So how does a manager impact this? First, they need to reinforce the organization's mission or purpose. So I use both terms. Really what I'm talking about is the purpose or the why the organization exists. Oftentimes an organization's mission may address that, but sometimes it does not. So that's why I wanted to include both. Work with employees to articulate a team purpose. So in the book, there's actually a process you can follow to do that. Help employees understand how their job fits in with the greater purpose. So you would think that maybe they just figure that out on their own, but typically that does not happen. It's a little bit easier if you work for maybe a nonprofit or something like that. I worked for a healthcare system that did a really good job in this area. So if you were to ask even like the sanitation worker that was cleaning the hospital rooms what they were doing, they would likely say, I'm creating a safe and clean environment for the patient to have a remarkable experience. Build trust. So building trust with employees and within the team is foundational and critical to your effectiveness as a leader. If you don't have trust, you don't have much at all. So how do you do that? First, you need to show respect. A study by Harvard Business Review said that respect is the #1 thing that employees want from leaders. A person of integrity. C.S. Lewis said that integrity is doing the right thing for the right reason, even when no one is watching. And it just makes sense that you want to work for somebody with integrity because you feel like they'll do the right thing for you as the employee and also for the organization. A really important one is to demonstrate humility. A lot of times people think of humility as being weakness or meekness, but really it is not. It's putting others before yourself. So I would like C.S. Lewis quotes. His quote on humility is that humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. So as I said, it's putting others before yourself. What are some other behaviors that demonstrate humility that you guys can think of? Obviously not having a big ego.
Admitting mistakes.
Admitting mistakes, absolutely. What else
I
comes to
probably
mind?
go to an extreme, but a self-deprecating sense of humor.
Yeah, sometimes.
Developing other people.
Yes. I think so. Being willing to ask for help, admitting that you don't know everything as the leader. Those are all a part of humility. Kind of gets to the next one, which I think is part of humility, but I felt it was important enough to call it out separately, and that's the willingness to be vulnerable. And then extend trust and give employees the autonomy to do their job. So I saw micromanager come up a lot in the traits and behaviors of bad bosses. And please micromanage me really said no employee ever. Nobody likes that. Just a little meme. If you guys haven't watched Office Space, it's a little dated, but a really good movie. It has some great examples of bad bosses. Manage yourself. So according to Google's Project Oxygen, employees want managers that are even-keeled and don't lose their cool. So what Project Oxygen was, I'm going to mention it a couple times. They did a study of what made a great manager at Google. And this was one of the main things that they found. So nobody likes a manager that's freaking out. And usually, or if you've ever had one, then everybody else kind of freaks out as a result. It rolls downhill. So what % of people do you think are truly self-aware? Anybody have a thought on that?
I'll guess 40%.
40%. Okay. Optimistic.
I say 30.
I was thinking 30, but I was trying to give a benefit of the doubt to people.
Actually, there was a study and it said that only 10 to 15% of people are truly self-aware, but 95% think that they are. Really, it's foundational. You must be self-aware to be effective leaders and manage ourselves well, as Thomas said earlier. I love this quote by John Maxwell. Human nature seems to endow us with the ability to size up everybody in the world except ourselves. What is self-management? Being able to quickly scan a range of potential responses to a situation and choose the one that leads to preferable outcomes, which is usually not freaking out and yelling at other people, right? It involves regulating your time, attention, and emotions while being aware of your strengths, weaknesses, and potential sources of bias. Don't be like this guy. Anybody ever had a boss like that?
My mom did.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I had one that was close.
Yeah, he would yell at her and cuss at her, and this is back in the day.
Wow. Okay, habit number 4, be a good coach. So you'll remember in the quiz that was shared that Gallup says that the number one thing senior leaders can do to increase employee engagement is to transition their bosses to coaches. Today's employees don't want managers, they want coaches. Here's just some statistics showing the case for coaching. According to the book, The Culture Solution, it's the number one way to elevate culture in your organization. As I said, Gallup says it should be the number one priority. Google Project Oxygen, which I referred to earlier, says that the best managers are good coaches, and Gen Z and millennials demand it. And by next year, they're going to make up 50% of the workforce. They strike fear in the hearts of a few of you. All right, how to be a good coach. So it's a pretty, I'm defining coach rather broadly. So they have to know how to give frequent and meaningful positive and developmental feedback in a motivational way. Coaching, so what I mean by that is less fixing and giving advice and more guiding others towards their own solutions. Knowing and capitalizing on employee strengths. Helping employees with career growth. So actually transitioning to more of a coaching approach is in and of itself going to help with growth, but then also, in other ways, helping employees grow and develop. And I don't mention it here because it comes up under communication, but obviously being a good listener is critical to being a good coach. Number 5, practice accountability. High retention managers hold themselves and others accountable for results. As it said in the quiz, 46% of managers were rated poorly on holding others accountable for results. And that's poorly, that's not just mediocre. So most do not do a great job of this. I like this quote by Stephen Covey, accountability breeds responsibility. And I teach 5 C's of accountability. The first is clarity. You got to have clarity of what is expected in order to be able to hold people accountable, because if you don't, they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, right? Second is courage. And I think this is why we're not that great at accountability a lot of times, because we don't like having those tough conversations, don't like moving into situations that might result in conflict. At least most of us do not. Third C is collaboration. So whenever you can, collaborating with the other person to come up with goals and outcomes. Fourth is consistency. And it's consistency in a couple of different ways. One is being fair and consistent. So if you, sorry, I'm admitting somebody. So if you are holding one person accountable, let's say for quality of their work, and there's another person who is as bad or worse, but maybe you just like them a little better, so you're not addressing the issue, that is not being fair and consistent. And then the other thing is consistency in communication and meeting to share how things are going. And then number 5, if you have to go there, is correction. And one of my favorite little mantras is what you permit, you promote. So if you are not holding people accountable, not having those conversations, essentially you are promoting the behavior or the performance that they are exhibiting. All right, so accountability does not always have to come from the manager, and in high-performing teams, there is accountability amongst the team. So how do you promote that? First, coaching your employees to address issues directly with others is one strategy, and then establishing and implementing team guidelines is another strategy which can work well. And what that is really just developing ground rules around how team members will interact with one another. And they're involved in that process. Everybody buys in, and then they can use it to hold one another accountable. And in the book, and also on my website, I have kind of the steps that you could use if you wanted to facilitate that yourself. Number 6, communicate well. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. That is so true. So some things covered in the book to improve communication. Be clear. You don't have to use fancy words. You don't have to talk political speak. minimizing acronyms, all of those things, just being clear and as concise as you can with your message. Over communicate. How many times do you think people need to hear something before it sticks?
7.
7. Very good. That is the correct answer. And that's kind of depressing, right? So, I mean, essentially for a manager, what feels like over communication is really what's necessary to get a point across a lot of times. Your message a 360. So if it's going to be something that you think might be sensitive or controversial, definitely think about it from the perspective of your stakeholders. Maybe even ask a peer or somebody you trust for feedback before you communicate that message.
Can I just mention something about communication?
Yeah.
And I'd like the clarification point, because you have people from different parts of the country who may not communicate the same well as you, and the meaning is different. So you have to elicit feedback to make sure that they understand what's going on. Case in point, if you were to go up north and say, well, I mashed something, and here down south, that means one thing. Up there, people would think you're mashing potatoes. They have no idea what that term means. So you have to be very clear and understand your audience when you are communicating.
Yes, that is a great point. Thank you, Luba. Okay, so to me, I think listening is really the most important communication skill. What do you guys think is the biggest problem with our listening?
Actually listening. Normally people are formulating their response and they haven't even heard the entire conversation from the other person's perspective yet.
Bingo. And I know I'm guilty. I think most of us are, unless
Me
we're
too.
really intentional about actually listening. Use your body language. Oh, go ahead.
Our brains are predisposed to self-protection. And so when somebody's sharing something, not because we're mean, arrogant, or anything, we just feel like we have to protect and promote ourselves, even if we don't naturally want to be that way. And so when someone's talking, it takes conscious effort to say, I'm going to shut down my brain to listen to yours, to give it space so I can respond appropriately. But that takes a conscious effort.
Yes, absolutely.
It also takes a conscious effort not to do what my grandmother did, which is to tell a story about what's being said, reading between the lines.
Yes. Okay. Very good. So next is using your body language and tone, which is actually the majority of communication, right? So using yours, also tapping in as you're listening to others to their body language and tone. Firm with action, so practice what you preach. And lead meetings and send emails that don't suck. Number 7, last but certainly not least, is show you care. So show your team you care about them and their well-being, and that's all aspects of their well-being. How do you do that? Show employees you care about them personally, as well as at work. So you know how we'll walk by somebody and say, how are you? Fine. How are you? Fine. Nobody really cares about the answer, right? So maybe pause sometimes to say, how are you really doing personally on a scale of 1 to 5, how are you doing today? Whatever it is, but really just practicing that pause to show them that you really care. Knowing a little bit about them personally is important and weaving that into conversations. And then if something seems off with the employee, being willing to initiate a caring conversation. Empathy, we hear a lot about empathy these days. So be empathetic when interacting with others. What that really means is listening without judgment, and then trying to understand or tapping into your own understanding if you have been through something similar. Flexibility, that's really big in today's workforce. So being flexible and assisting employees in blending work and life when possible. No, it's not possible for everybody to have remote, hybrid work schedules and things like that. Where you can, it can be a good retention tool, excuse me. If you can't, then I think just being flexible and realizing that people have outside lives and things that they have to attend to sometimes is important. And then finally, showing appreciation and providing meaningful recognition. When looking at bosses in TV and in movies, there are really not many positive role models. Ted Lasso was about the best one I could find. All right, so you don't have to share here, but just, kind of in your mind of these 7 strategies, what would others say you're doing well? Where could you improve? So I'll share just briefly about me professionally. I've been in HR for over 30 years now. I'm still relatively sane, depending on who you ask. I'm the president of Influence HR Consulting, which so far is just me. I help busy leaders retain, engage, and develop their talent. Passionate about helping people meet their God-given potential and helping organizations facilitate cultures of engagement and well-being. Just real quick, a few things about me personally. I have a blended family. My husband and I have been married for 20 years. He had 2 girls. I had 2 girls, or we still do, when we got married. Now they're all trying to adult in their 20s. Part of what resulted in me writing a couple of books in the Christian nonfiction space about being a hot mess. Everybody wants a hot mess HR consultant, right? All right, so that's my husband and I. These are some of the things that I like. Those are my oldest stepdaughter's children. They live in Oklahoma. We got to visit them recently, 1 and 3. They are adorable. I'm a semi-retired fitness instructor, and that is my favorite employee, Izzy. Why this book? Said after the hot mess books, I was never writing another book, but I actually had created a workshop series around these 7 habits. And as a result of that, I was like, this could be a book. It could be kind of like a workshop in a book. But it wasn't quite that simple. But anyway, I got it done. So short, simple, to the point, provides actionable strategies to simplify and elevate your leadership. It's written from the perspective of an HR leader, which is a little bit different, like a workshop in a book. And it's relatively inexpensive comparatively. Goodness, books have gotten really expensive. So how do you get it? It's available on Amazon. The paperback's $11.99. The Kindle's $8.99. Kindle, if you have Kindle Unlimited, I believe it's free. And I'm going to be doing a book study. So it's really a reasonable way of getting some leadership development. So if you or somebody on your team is interested, or you know of others that might be interested, it will be 1-hour virtual sessions for 5 weeks, only $59.99. What we'll do is talk through each of the habits. Obviously, I'm doubling up on a couple of those. And to get your bonuses, I actually will send an email as well, but here's the QR code. So there's a book study discussion guide, self-awareness worksheet, and leadership roadmap are a part of those. And I'd just like to pause and see if you have questions, comments, or cheap shots for me.
This was great. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Leslie,
Everybody
will you,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask, will you use this book in your training when you
Yes,
go to other
ma'am.
companies? And are you offering that to the companies?
Haven't yet, but my plan is to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I have a leadership boot camp series which touches on all the habits, and then I actually have a series of courses called the 7 Habits of High Retention Managers.
Nice.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, a couple things. I am going to send out a follow-up email and again, took down names for a drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card and also going to give away a couple of free books. So watch your email for that. I think I got everybody down that attended. Any other questions or comments?
I'll just say, Leslie, thank you so much for doing this. As someone who has had the fortune of working together with you in the past, it's great to hear your voice again. It's great to see that nothing's changed. You're still the best in the industry, and I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge and writing this book for us. I look forward to reading it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jason. I appreciate those comments, and we kind of experienced a not so great boss together, didn't we?
I really had to bite my tongue when you were asking for stories. I was like, if I say any of these, Leslie's going to know exactly who I'm talking about.
Okay, I share them in my book. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope everybody has a great weekend.
Thank you, Leslie. It was really good.
Thank you, Leslie. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
Leslie.
everyone.
Bye.
Ciao.